What often happens is at the start of a growing season, people plant like crazy because they're excited about growing their veg. And rightly so, why wouldn't you be? But what also can happen is the veggies that you so furiously planted at the start of that season tend to peter out before the season is actually over, leaving a gap of time when you could have still been growing and harvesting good, fresh, clean veg. I like to call this the veggie gap. And because I think a veggie gap is unfair, I'm going to give you my 5 top things you can do to grow more veg all season right to the end. Let's get into it. Number 1 is OverSowing, crowd growing, sardines, whatever you want to call it. My vegetables don't practice social distancing. I squish them in nice and close because they don't mind being snuggled together, and I can get more out of a smaller space. I then thin the plants out over the growing season. So I harvest baby greens, baby carrots in this case, baby celery, baby beets, baby everything. I just love babies. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with spacing your veggies out as is on the packet or as people recommend, but lots of vegetables can be grown this way and extend that harvest. And you say, well, how can I extend the harvest? Because you'll have the larger mature ones at the end, but there might still be a gap before the season's over. Well, sometimes yes, but often because they are grown closer together, they compete with each other, and because of that competition, they grow a little slower. You might not want this for everything, but in these types of crops, for example, lettuce, celery, carrots, those types of veg don't hurt at all to compete with each other. And as you're harvesting the baby greens, the baby carrots, you're then leaving room for the other ones to finally mature and grow on. And often this does extend the harvest. In this bed here, they're not all the same crop. I've got onions, lettuce, some dill, so a real mixture. And I know that the onions always grow slower, and then they start to speed up as the season starts to end here in our part of the world. Growing them all crowded in together is a really good example of being able to maximize space and grow more with less over an extended period. Number 2 is nutrition or fertilizer, and it's not what you think. I'm not going to give you guys the same old spiel how you've got to give your plants enough food or they won't sustain themselves throughout the season. I know that's a given. I'm going to approach this a little bit differently, and I'm going to approach it the exact way I always have done practically in my own garden, which might surprise you. This is just about the end of our cow manure. It looks like soil, doesn't it? You know, but it's actually dried cow manure. And I love using that in the garden. It's not overly fertile, but behind us here is the remaining pile of chicken manure that I've got also, which is quite potent. Look how thick it is. So a little bit of this goes a long way in the garden. I like doing things easy, and for me it's about preparation at the start of the season, or preparation on that garden bed before I plant something and letting it sustain itself. This whole row of healthy looking beets and peas, just look at them. Look at how green and lush they are. Yes, they're all crowded in together as well, so you'd think they'd suffer more trying to compete with food, but it's not all about the nutrition it can get through fertilizer. It's also about the structure of the soil, because often your plants will seek more nutrition out of just the soil. They're not even looking for that extra fertilizer or raw hit of chicken manure or commercial fertilizer that you might put down, or water in a soluble fertilizer. I think if your soil or medium is poor, then you're going to run into those issues of either under fertilizing or over fertilizing. And this way takes the guesswork out of that and makes it so much more easier. These tomatoes here, look how healthy they are. I will not be giving them any more food ever, but I can guarantee you they will last right into our steaming hot summer before eventually the weather and the climate is just too much for them. But it won't be because of lack of nutrients. I prepared this bed simply with some cow manure, some mulch, some compost. But if you're having to constantly guess, am I giving these plants enough fertilizer? And then you either under or over fertilizer because you haven't set the bed up at the beginning, that's a sure way to shorten the season and to fall into that gap where it's run out of production and you've still got plenty of growing season left to go. Number 3 is pruning. Now, tomato plants are a classic example. Most of you guys probably are aware that you can slow down the early demise of tomatoes by pruning off any diseased leaves and foliage. Pruning also revitalizes plants and triggers new growth, because when you prune off foliage from a plant, it thinks it's being grazed by something, or it's had a storm and lost leaves or branches, and its natural defense system is to regrow back, stimulate itself to repairing those broken leaves, broken branches. If you prune your plants in the correct way and not overdo it, of course, that will stimulate growth, and often that growth will come back new, improved, bushier and better, producing more growth, like if you're just going to eat the foliage itself of those certain plants, or perhaps even more fruit like tomatoes, so that at least you can extend that harvest right out to the end of the season. Number 4 is regular harvesting. And pruning, we just talked about, can be regular harvesting. And there's a bit of a crossover there, but there are some extra points that I'd like to make. But plants like peas, this is a really good example. Let me find one. Peas, broccolini, you know, the broccoli that grows in shoots that you keep harvesting and then it keeps generating. Lettuce is another one, if you're just harvesting the lettuce leaves. All these are good examples of the more you harvest, the more you get. And who wouldn't want more of that? The thing is, depending on the type of plant, if you leave the plants grow on naturally and don't harvest as they go, you'll end up shortening the life, because the plant will reach maturity, it'll have all the fruit or it'll have all the foliage it needs, and then it will die back and go into the new stage. Whereas if you keep plucking the fruit off, like in the case of peas or lettuce, harvesting the leaves, it will then keep regenerating those pieces back, or trying to grow more fruit, trying to grow more leafy matter, so that it will prolong the time to maturity. It won't stop it, but it'll prolong the time, or it'll slow it down. And over time then you will get more peas, as an example, or more lettuce leaves out of that plant, rather than just leaving it go. There are exceptions, of course. You might be thinking of a hearting variety of lettuce, like an iceberg lettuce, where you won't harvest the leaves as they go, and that's fine. There are exceptions to everything. But I'm saying generally, the more that you harvest along the way, the more produce you're going to get out of your crops, and the longer you will get out of that season. Number 5 is succession sowing. If you're not sowing in succession, you're not maximizing the crop growth over the full season. You can see the gaps here in the middle of this bed, and that's because we had our cabbages mature and then we've harvested them and cut them out essentially. This one here is still remaining in the ground. We've just cut the top off and it's starting to reshoot. That's something different, but that will then again regrow and produce some mini cabbage heads, but it won't produce another large one. But what I really want to talk about is this little seedling here, this little seedling here, and there's another one over there. I'm replacing those larger cabbages. As they get harvested, I'll usually pull them out. I might leave 1 or 2 in to grow on and get some mini shoots out of them, but most of the time we'll just yank them out, utilize that mature harvest, and then replace it straight away with a seedling. There's always enough time to get another harvest, especially if you time it right. If you've planted your cabbages early at the start of the season, you will still have enough time to be able to replace the ones that you've harvested and still get another crop before the end of that season. In our case, we start harvesting these cabbages now through the middle of our winter, and then we plant more seedlings and be able to harvest another full mature crop at the start of summer. And yes, I'm planting them in exactly the same bed, in some cases in the same planting hole that I had the other ones in, because I set this bed up properly in the beginning, like I was talking about earlier. I don't even need to add any extra fertilizer. I can just replace crops with new seedlings and know that they will have enough nutrients to keep them going all the way through. Of course, if you want and you don't have enough space in existing garden beds, just make a new garden bed like I've done. Or you can use containers or anything else to extend that growing season and plant more seedlings out to cross over or succession sow in order to extend that season right out to the maximum. But say you stuffed up a little bit with the season and the timings. Well, so what? You might get half a cabbage. It's still worth it. You might get less tomatoes, or you might get not a fully grown lettuce. Well, that doesn't matter, does it? You'll just harvest them immature or small, but you're still extending that harvest out. And that's what I'm talking about. Do you have any extra tips on how to grow more veg in a season? If you do, whack them down in the comment section below so we can all read and learn from them. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give it a big thumbs up, and let's together try to close that veggie growing gap and extend that harvest right out to the end of the season so we can all grow more and that veggie gap just gets smaller. Thanks a lot for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Bye for now.